Maybe no one ever taught you how to be alone. They taught you to please, to seek attention, to avoid bothering others, to fit in. They taught you that if you're alone, something is wrong with you, that if you don't have a partner, you're incomplete, that if you spend a weekend in silence, it must mean something's missing. But that's not true. What you're missing isn't company. What you're missing is reconciliation with yourself. We live in a noisy world, saturated with images, people, messages that constantly push you to look outward. And when a moment of silence finally comes, a moment of solitude, you perceive it as punishment. You feel empty, uncomfortable, lost. But the discomfort doesn't come from solitude. It comes from what's inside you once the noise fades away. Because solitude, when lived well, doesn't hurt. Solitude, when embraced, doesn't wound. Solitude is a mirror, a refuge, a rebirth. And it can become one of the greatest strengths of a human being when they stop running from themselves. Marcus Aurelius knew it. He spent hours alone, reflecting, writing, observing his mind with the discipline of a warrior. Seneca knew it too. In exile, he found the inner freedom he never had amidst the noise of Rome. Epictetus practiced it by force, in poverty, abandonment, and the contempt of the powerful. And yet he cultivated a strength that nothing and no one could take from him. Being alone is not a flaw, it's a virtue, a practice, a way of living with presence. Because when you learn to be alone, you discover things no one else can teach you. What truly matters to you. What you don't need, what you deserve. What you want to heal, what you can build from within. When you learn to be alone, you stop desperately chasing love, and you begin to give it, first to yourself, then to the world. When you learn to be alone, you no longer need others to fill your silence, because you discover that your soul lives in that silence. This is not a message to isolate you from the world. It's a message to help you reconnect with yourself before returning to it. Because if you can't live with yourself, how do you expect to live with anyone else? This Stoic session won't give you magical answers, but it will give you something more important, deep questions, and the courage to look within without fear. You'll learn that being alone is not a punishment, it's an opportunity. It's not emptiness, it's space. Space to breathe, to heal, to listen, to rebuild. Because you weren't born to fill silence with noise. You were born to fill your life with meaning. And meaning is not found in another person. It is found in you. If you're here, it's because you're ready to learn how to be with yourself. Not out of resignation, but by choice. Not like someone who gives up, but like someone who awakens. And if this session touches anything within you, let it be this. The time to stop running has come. It's time to make peace with your solitude, to stop seeing it as an enemy and start treating it as an ally, because only those who learn to be alone can love without attachment, live without fear, and walk with their heads held high. And that, dear listener, is freedom. Before we begin, leave your declaration of commitment in the comments. Starting today, I learn to be with myself without running away from me. Let that phrase be your reminder that solitude is not punishment. It is the path of those who no longer abandon themselves. Today is the day to honor yourself, to stop begging for company, and to start building an unbreakable relationship with yourself. Without further delay, let's begin. Stoic Lesson 1. Being alone doesn't mean you're incomplete. Solitude has a bad reputation. We see it as punishment, as a void that needs to be filled. But the Stoics believed the opposite. Solitude is a sacred space where the deepest self-knowledge can arise. Being alone is not a deficiency, it's an opportunity, a test, a truth that few dare to face. Seneca made it clear. The worst solitude is to not be comfortable with yourself. That phrase holds a key that many ignore, because it's not the absence of people that hurts, it's the disconnection from oneself. When you don't know who you are, when you don't know what you think unless someone else tells you what to think, when you're unsure of your worth unless someone else validates it, then even surrounded by people, you still feel alone. Learning to be alone with dignity and peace is one of the most rebellious and wise acts you can undertake. It means you stop begging for attention. You stop pleading for emotional crumbs. It means you look at yourself in the mirror without fear, coexist with your thoughts without running away, and recognize yourself as someone worthy, even in silence. Today's culture does not favor solitude. On the contrary, it fears it. It constantly pushes us outward, towards social media, noise, the crowd, external validation. But that creates dependency. And whoever depends is not free. Stoicism is a philosophy of freedom, freedom of thought, emotional freedom, freedom to be. Being alone without feeling empty begins when you realize that you don't need to fill a gap. You need to inhabit yourself fully. Emptiness is not the lack of others. Emptiness appears when you've abandoned your own inner spaces, when you flee from yourself. Imagine you are a house. If you never spend time in it, it becomes cold, foreign, abandoned. But if you walk through it, observe it, clean it, decorate it with your presence, then that house becomes a home. That's what you must do with yourself. Inhabit yourself, acknowledge yourself, listen to yourself. Stoics like Epictetus taught us to distinguish what is within our control from what isn't. The presence of others, their affection, their time, these things are beyond your control. But your relationship with yourself is not. And if you decide your own company is enough, if you decide you can walk alongside your thoughts, then solitude is transformed. From punishment into companion, from burden into teacher. The external world is full of distractions, but when you sit in silence, when no one is applauding or judging you, your truth emerges, your voice emerges, and that voice doesn't need likes or applause or another's presence to be worthy. That voice needs space, time, and attention. That's why solitude can be medicine. It can be that moment when you stop performing for others and start being for yourself. That moment when you no longer need to explain anything, justify anything, prove anything. Just be, just breathe, just exist. And in that quiet existence, you realize you are not incomplete. You are simply with yourself. When you reach that point, something shifts. You no longer accept just any kind of relationship just to fill a void. You no longer tolerate what diminishes you, manipulates you, or makes you feel small. Because you understand that being alone is better than being poorly accompanied, and that dignified solitude is preferable to empty companionship. That is the freedom Stoicism offers you, to not depend, to not beg, to not flee, to be, with presence, with composure, with self-love, not as a superficial slogan, but as a daily practice of internal reconnection. You are not lesser for being alone. You are not incomplete. You are whole. The problem is that society hasn't taught us to see the value in solitude. We've been led to believe that we're only worthy if someone chooses us, calls us, walks beside us. But Stoicism reminds you, worth is not up for negotiation. Worth is something you recognize, and the first person who must recognize it is you. Today, I invite you to rewrite the story, to stop seeing solitude as the enemy, to stop filling every silence with noise, to stop desperately seeking outside what has always lived inside. Make your solitude a temple, a refuge, a place of strength, not scarcity, because when you accomplish that, there will be no loneliness that hurts you and no emptiness that breaks you. You'll be with yourself. And that, in this noisy and superficial world, is already a Stoic victory. Stoic Lesson 2. Your happiness doesn't depend on company. There are silences that don't hurt. There are voids that don't cause pain. They only scare us because we haven't yet learned to understand them. Many people believe being alone is a sign of failure, that if you don't have a partner, available friends, messages to reply to, or weekend plans, something must be wrong with you. But that is the greatest lie we've been sold. That company heals everything, that only in the presence of others can we feel alive, loved, complete. The Stoics, on the other hand, knew that true strength is tested in solitude. Epictetus put it bluntly and clearly: the wise man is self-sufficient, not because he refuses to have friends, but because he can live happily without them. And no, this is not contempt for others, it's love for yourself. It's the understanding that your inner peace cannot depend on the constant fluctuation of human relationships, on someone's presence or absence, because everything external is unstable. Anything beyond your control can change in an instant. And if your well-being is tied to that, then it doesn't belong to you. How many times have you felt anxious just because you didn't receive a message? How many times have you questioned your worth because someone walked away or didn't choose you? How many times have you forced yourself to share your time with people who brought nothing meaningful just because you were afraid of being with yourself? That's where this lesson becomes urgent, because those who don't know how to be alone are doomed to seek in others what they should find within themselves. And when that happens, every relationship becomes a need, not a choice. You don't love from fullness, you love from lack. You don't share out of joy, you share out of emptiness. And no one deserves the responsibility of completing you. Conscious solitude is a door, one that not everyone dares to open, because on the other side there are no applause, no validation, no mirrors through which to see yourself reflected in the eyes of others. There is only you, with your thoughts, your light, your shadow, your truth. But that's also where freedom begins, because when you realize you can be at peace with yourself, that you can enjoy your own company, walk without a companion, eat without sharing, think without distraction, you become untamable. You no longer beg for attention. You no longer settle for half-hearted relationships. You no longer accept any presence just to avoid being alone, because you understand that true company is the kind that adds something, not the kind that merely takes up space. Being stoic is understanding that happiness doesn't come from always having someone by your side. It comes from being able to look inward and say, I'm okay here, with myself, right now. And that's not selfishness, it's dignity. It means choosing relationships from abundance, not from scarcity. It means being able to say, I choose you because I want to, not because I need you to fill my emptiness. Do you know what the longest relationship you'll ever have in life is? The one you have with yourself. And if you don't learn to live with yourself, to calm your own fears, to be your refuge amid the chaos, you'll depend on other people's love like a castaway clinging to any floating piece of wood to avoid drowning. But you weren't born to beg for affection. You were born to build yourself with strength, to be the kind of person who respects themselves so much that they never betray themselves just to fit in, who never forgets themselves just to please others, who never abandons themselves out of fear of being alone. That is the true freedom Stoicism teaches. The freedom to not need so that you can choose. The freedom to not depend so you can love with clarity. The freedom to be with yourself without feeling lesser for not having others. Because the one who achieves this no longer seeks company out of emptiness, but from fullness. And from that fullness, everything else flows. Healthier relationships, deeper connections, lighter attachments, because everything starts with you. So, if today you feel lonely, don't reject it. Listen to it. Maybe it's not a punishment. Maybe it's an invitation to get to know yourself better, to grow, to heal, to free yourself from the idea that someone else will come and rescue you. Because the only one who can truly do that is you. And that realization, even if it hurts, is a doorway to peace. When you walk through it, you'll understand you were never truly alone. You were with yourself. And that, once you learn to value it, is enough. Your relationship with yourself is the foundation of everything. If today you decide to stop fearing solitude and start inhabiting it with strength and awareness, subscribe. This space is a refuge for those who choose to stop filling themselves with the external and start building from within. Here we cultivate presence, dignity, and inner power. No more emptiness disguised as company. Let's continue. Stoic lesson 3. Solitude is your most honest teacher. There is a truth no one wants to hear, but that we all feel deep in our soul. There is no mirror clearer than solitude. It is there, in that space where the world falls silent and company disappears, that the most revealing dialogue of your life begins, the one you hold with yourself. In a time where being alone is mistaken for being incomplete, Stoicism reminds us that there is immeasurable depth in the act of sitting alone with your mind. Marcus Aurelius, in his most demanding moments as emperor, didn't seek answers in the clamor of the Senate or in the voices of his advisors. He sought them in the intimacy of his meditations, a notebook meant for no one but himself. Because he understood that the soul, in order to hear its truth, needs silence. And yet, that silence is uncomfortable, because it reveals everything we've avoided facing, the decisions we've postponed, the wounds that still sting, the insecurities we've masked with distraction. Solitude doesn't applaud you, flatter you, or entertain you. It simply sits in front of you and says, "Here I am. Do you dare to look at yourself without a mask?" Many run from that moment. We turn on the TV, scroll through social media, seek out a call, a date, an excuse. But what we avoid is not the silence. It's the encounter with who we are when no one else is around. Epictetus warned us clearly, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And how can you be your own master if you never face yourself? Solitude is like training for the soul. At first it feels like punishment. It feels like a void, like abandonment. But if you don't run, if you choose to stay, it becomes strength. It's in that space that you discover you can hold yourself up without emotional crutches, that your worth doesn't depend on being seen, chosen, or accompanied. It's in that apparent emptiness that you begin to fill your life with yourself. The Stoics saw introspection as a sacred daily practice, not to fall into self-pity or purposeless isolation, but to build a true relationship with the only person who will be with you until the end, yourself. And it's not easy, because to hear yourself, you must silence the world. To understand yourself, you must stop explaining yourself to others. To accept yourself, you must let go of the need to please. But once you do it, once you sit with yourself and start inhabiting that space without judgment, something opens up, a peace that doesn't depend on anything external, a clarity that no one else can give you, a dignity that comes from the simple act of being with yourself without needing to escape. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Withdraw into yourself. The rational soul finds its wellspring within." That is the key. Because as long as you're searching outside for what can only emerge from within, you'll live in a constant state of emptiness. But when you discover that the well exists, you no longer need to search endlessly. Being alone stops being a problem. It becomes an opportunity, a way to come home. And then every silent moment transforms into an act of power. Not because you're isolated, but because you are whole. Not because you lack company, but because you've learned to provide your own. That is the teacher that solitude hides. It comes with no promises, no instant rewards. But if you listen to it, if you respect it, if you walk through it with courage, it will show you a version of yourself that is stronger, more aware and freer than any relationship or external recognition could ever give you. So the next time you feel that fear of emptiness, that urge to fill the silence with something or someone, pause, breathe, and remember that being alone is not being empty, it is being with yourself. And when you allow yourself to truly be, you are all you need. Solitude is not a prison, it is a portal, and you hold the key. Stoic Lesson 4. Quality matters more than quantity. We live in the age of connection. And yet, we've never been so alone, surrounded by thousands of followers, group chats, messages, likes, and notifications. Yet deep down, what we often feel is an echo, not real presence, a void full of noise, a crowd that doesn't see us, that doesn't hear us, that doesn't hold us when we truly need support. And in the middle of that paradox, so many people, yet so little soul, Stoic wisdom emerges, as relevant today as it was in ancient Rome. Because the Stoics didn't measure life by numbers, but by depth. Not by how many people are around you, but by how meaningful your relationship is with yourself and the few who truly matter. Epictetus said, "It is better to be alone than in bad company." Not as a comforting phrase, but as a principle of dignity, because superficial company doesn't soothe the soul. It fills it with unmet expectations, empty conversations, presences that are there, but not really there. And that hurts more than honest solitude. Many people fear being alone, and out of that fear, they accept relationships that don't nourish them, bonds that drain them, company that exists only to avoid facing themselves. But what they don't see is that by doing so, they are abandoning themselves, surrounded by bodies, but their soul is left orphaned. The Stoics teach us that true companionship isn't measured by the number of faces in a room, but by the quality of the silence you can share with another without feeling alone, by the freedom to be yourself without fear of judgment, by the presence that reminds you of your worth, not the one that makes you doubt it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Seek the company of those who elevate your soul, flee from those who pollute it." That sentence, simple yet powerful, is a compass in times where we confuse popularity with love, visibility with closeness, presence with depth. And this isn't about becoming a hermit or distrusting everyone. It's about waking up, about learning to choose, about understanding that your time and energy are sacred and not everyone deserves to share them with you. That being alone, when there's no sincere company, is an act of self-love, not resignation. Because when you surround yourself with people just to avoid being alone, you're selling yourself short. You're allowing your essence to be diluted among relationships that don't know you, don't care for you, don't see you, and that price is far too high. So what does Stoicism propose? It proposes that you learn to value your own company as much as you crave that of others, that you become able to sit with yourself without needing escape, that you build a relationship with yourself so solid, so kind, so deep, that any bond that comes afterward is a complement, not a crutch. When you achieve that, something changes. You no longer accept just any word, any gesture, any relationship. You no longer settle for simply filling space. You seek meaning, you seek truth. And you discover that you don't need many people, just the right ones. And that right doesn't mean perfect, constant, or always easy, but authentic. And that is enough. Solitude then ceases to be an enemy. It becomes an ally, because it teaches you to discern, to choose from awareness, not from lack, to build a small circle, yes, but a strong one, where every bond matters, where every encounter nourishes, where every word carries weight. And in the meantime, until those people arrive, if they do, you have yourself, and you are enough. You are more than enough, because you've learned to be your own best company, to give yourself what you once begged for, to care for yourself, listen to yourself, respect yourself, to fill yourself with the only thing no external presence can give you, your own authenticity. The Stoics lived with little, but they lived with fullness. They didn't need crowds to feel complete. They knew that a peaceful heart is worth more than 1,000 empty words, that a serene mind has more strength than any applause, that a coherent soul, even if alone, is freer than one surrounded by masks. So the next time you feel alone, ask yourself, am I truly alone or just surrounded by what doesn't fulfill me? Do I long for company or for connection? Am I trying to fill a void or am I learning to inhabit it? The answer will show you that solitude, when lived with wisdom, is not absence, it is presence. It is a filter, it is clarity, and by choosing quality over quantity, you are choosing something the world has forgotten, the value of what's real. Stoic Lesson 5. Solitude strengthens your character. There are moments in life when everything seems to collapse, people drift away, doors close, silences that once didn't hurt now weigh like mountains. In those moments, being alone can feel like a sentence, but to the Stoics it was the opposite. An opportunity, a training ground for the soul, a crucible where character is forged and true inner strength is revealed. Seneca stated it with conviction: adversity reveals genius, prosperity conceals it. And for many, the greatest adversity is facing oneself in complete solitude. Because when there's no one to blame, no one to save you, only one option remains: look within and hold steady. In this era where everything is shared, commented on, validated or rejected in seconds, being alone seems almost unnatural. But precisely because it goes against the current, it holds immense power. Because there, in that space without witnesses or applause, the true Stoic spirit is forged. It's where you learn who you are when no one is watching, where you stop performing for others and begin to act on principle. Character is not built in comfort. It is built in trial, in discomfort, in the daily decision to keep walking, even when there are no hands holding yours, to rise without anyone celebrating it, to make difficult decisions because they're right, not because someone told you to or expects it of you. When you're alone, everything becomes clearer, because there are no masks to hold up, no need to fill silences, no urge to fit in. You can simply be raw, honest, imperfect, but you. And in that honesty, transformation begins, because only those who truly know themselves can begin to change from within. Only those who've faced their own shadows without an audience can say they've truly grown. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength isn't superficial. It's not the kind that shouts the loudest or appears the most unbreakable. It's the serene strength of someone who has cried in silence and kept going, of someone who has stood at the edge of collapse and chosen discipline, of someone who has been alone and used that solitude to shape their spirit. And this is not about romanticizing solitude. It's not easy, it's not comfortable, but it is fertile, because in solitude there are no distractions, no interference. It's just you and your decisions, your thoughts, your habits, your will. And if you have the courage to look at all that without running, without numbing yourself with entertainment, without rushing into relationships out of fear, then you begin to become indestructible. Society tells you that you need company to be happy, that success is celebrated in groups, that worth lies in visibility. But the Stoics knew that true greatness is born in intimacy, that leaders are forged in silence, that virtue needs no witnesses. Learning to be alone is like learning to walk barefoot. At first it hurts, but then your feet become stronger, more sensitive, more agile. You begin to sense the terrain clearly, to step with awareness, to move with direction, and you no longer need crutches, or validation, or distractions. In that transformation, your character no longer depends on others. You stop reacting from impulse and start acting from reflection. You no longer act out of fear, but out of conviction. You stop avoiding pain and begin learning from it. You turn it into mastery. You integrate it. You transmute it. And then, one day, you realize something essential, that being alone for so long didn't weaken you. On the contrary, it made you solid, it made you wise, it gave you roots. And now, when someone arrives, they won't come to complete you, but to share with you, not to fill you, but to walk beside you without carrying your emptiness. That is the miracle of solitude when lived with courage and purpose. It transforms fear into character, emptiness into clarity, need into freedom. So if you're going through a deep season of solitude, don't curse it, don't avoid it, live it, embrace it, work through it, because you're in the most sacred workshop of all, the workshop where your character is forged, where your essence is revealed, where the decision is made who you will become. And that is priceless. Stoic Lesson 6. Silence helps you hear your inner voice. We live in a noisy world, not just because of the sounds around us, but because of the constant chatter of opinions, messages, expectations, news, notifications. Everything competes for our attention, everything screams, everything demands, and amid that uproar, something gets lost, your own voice. The Stoics knew that wisdom isn't found in an excess of information, but in the ability to discern. And to discern, you need silence. But not just any silence, not the one that comes when you turn off your phone or close a door. The other kind of silence, deeper, more challenging, the silence of being alone with yourself, without distractions, without excuses, without company that pulls you away from you. Marcus Aurelius used to retreat into meditation, not as a luxury but as a necessity. He knew that in the noise of the world it's easy to lose your way, easy to forget what you believe in, what you value, what you want to build. Noise drags you away, silence brings you back. Why is it so hard for us to seek silence? Because in silence, the thoughts we avoid emerge, the uncomfortable questions, the wounds we haven't healed, the decisions we've postponed. In noise, all of that stays hidden, but in silence, everything speaks. And that's exactly what makes silence so powerful, because it's not empty, it's fertile, a sacred pause, an opportunity to return to yourself. When you are in silence, you listen. You listen to your body, your emotions, your intuition. You listen to that part of you that doesn't need words or arguments, but has always known the truth. That voice that has whispered all your life which path to take, but which you've often silenced out of fear, out of the desire to please others, out of fear of being alone. Epictetus taught that we can't control what happens outside of us, but we can control how we respond. And to respond wisely, you must first listen, but not to the world, not to social media, not to the gurus. Listen to yourself, listen to your center, your conscience, your virtue. Today, we confuse knowledge with accumulation. We think more noise means more understanding, more stimulation means more growth. But often, it's the opposite. The more noise you consume, the further you move from yourself. The more you voice opinions about everything, the less you grasp the essential. And the essential is always found in silence. Silence confronts you, but it also frees you. Because when you learn to be in silence without anxiety, without needing to fill the space with another voice or a screen, you attain something few possess: inner sovereignty. And this isn't about being antisocial or escaping the world. It's about choosing moments of stillness, like someone returning home, like someone cleaning the dust off a sacred room. Because your mind is that, a temple, and silence is its ceremony. Picture this: 1 hour a day without your phone, a walk with no music, an afternoon without seeking approval, a coffee alone, without forced conversations. You don't need a retreat in the mountains, just courage. Courage to turn down the noise and turn up your awareness. Seneca said, "No wind is favorable to the one who doesn't know where they are going." But how can you know your destination if you never listen to yourself? How can you know who you are if you're always busy following the noise of others? There's an uncomfortable truth that deep down we all know. Many people fear silence because in it they can't pretend. In silence, you can't hide from your contradictions. You can't escape from your unrealized desires, your poor choices, your open wounds. But it's also in that very silence that you can begin to heal, to organize, to grow. That's why silence is not punishment. It's medicine, a form of mental cleansing, a way to remember what truly matters, a tool to rebuild yourself with truth, without adornments, without masks, without noise. And when you manage that, when you befriend silence and no longer need constant validation, when you can sit with yourself without distress, you become unshakable. Because you know who you are, because you no longer need the world to tell you. That's where true freedom begins. Not in having more followers, not in collecting more likes, but in sitting in a quiet room and feeling peace. So if today you feel lost, anxious, overwhelmed, don't run to seek more stimuli. Do the opposite. Close your eyes, turn off the noise, stay with yourself, listen, because within you there is no emptiness. There is a voice waiting to be heard, and that voice is you. If you've made it this far, it's because you're ready to discover the fullness of your own company. Subscribe and comment "My solitude is my strength" to reaffirm your commitment to a conscious, integral, and emotionally free life. This is just the first step toward a life where being alone doesn't mean being empty, but being whole. When you reach the 9th lesson, you'll experience a powerful shift that could change how you live with yourself. Stoic Lesson 7. Solitude is not punishment. It's a choice. Most people aren't really afraid of being alone. They're afraid of what they feel when they are. Because in solitude, there's no refuge, no screens to distract you, no forced conversations to disguise the emptiness. There's only you. And if you haven't learned to live with yourself, that can feel like a sentence. But it's not. Solitude is not punishment. It's a choice. And more than that, it can be a privilege, a spiritual practice, a return to what matters. But for that to happen, you must change the way you perceive it. The Stoics knew that it's not what happens to us that wounds us, but how we interpret what happens. Epictetus said it clearly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And this applies perfectly to solitude. If you believe that being alone is a sign of failure, you will feel like a failure. If you see solitude as a sentence, you will live as a prisoner. But if you see it as an opportunity, you'll begin to discover that there's a kind of solitude that doesn't hurt, that even frees you, because there's a solitude that breaks you, but there's also one that rebuilds you, a solitude that's imposed on you, and another you choose, one that isolates you, and another that connects you to yourself like never before, one that hurts because of abandonment, and another that heals because of decision. And that second kind is Stoic solitude. It's not easy to reach. It takes courage. It takes detachment. It takes letting go of the constant need for approval, company, and external noise. But once you choose it, a silent and powerful path begins, a path that leads to your center. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of absolute power, political noise, war, and the pressures of empire, sought moments to be alone. Not as an escape, but as discipline, as training for the soul, because he understood that whoever can be at peace with themselves can be in the world without losing themselves. That's the paradox. When you learn to be alone by choice, you no longer need to be alone, because you're not running away, you're not hiding, you're not rejecting the world. You choose it or not, but from freedom, not fear. And then solitude stops hurting, because it's no longer the absence of something, but the presence of you. Epictetus said, "You are only a victim if you decide to be one." In solitude, this is truer than ever. You can experience it as exile or as sanctuary. You can think something is missing or realize you finally have everything you need to begin. Many don't know how to be alone because they've always lived for others, to please, to belong, to be accepted. So when you step away from all that, at first it may hurt. You feel invisible, dispensable, uncomfortable with yourself. But if you resist that first wave, you discover something priceless. For the first time, you can just be you. No social makeup, no masks, no need to explain, just you, your thoughts, your silence, your emotions. And even if that rawness feels overwhelming at first, it's where true authenticity begins. Because you can't live with others in a healthy way if you don't first know how to live with yourself. You can't love if you don't accept yourself. You can't truly connect if you're always dependent. Chosen solitude trains you for all of that. It makes you strong. It makes you free. It's not an easy road. We know there are long nights, there are memories that resurface, there are wounds that bleed without warning, but there are also discoveries. There's peace. There are moments of clarity that would never arrive if you were always accompanied. Society taught you that you need someone else to feel complete, but the wise across all ages have taught the opposite. You need to feel complete before you can truly be with someone, because only when you no longer need can you choose. And choosing from fullness is one of the highest forms of freedom. So the next time you find yourself alone, don't see it as something negative. Don't think, why don't I have someone? Instead, ask, who am I when I'm alone? Because that's the real question, and the answer could change your life. Learn to see solitude as an act of dignity, as a sacred space, as a brave choice in a world that constantly runs away from itself. Because when you choose to be with yourself, you're not alone anymore. You are home. Stoic lesson 8. Don't run from your mind. Get to know it. There's a deep reason why so many people fear solitude. They don't know how to live with their own mind. As soon as silence settles in and the distractions fade, thoughts begin to surface. Thoughts that have been repressed for years. Doubts, guilt, insecurities. Inner voices that never truly went quiet. They were just drowned out by noise. Being alone is not the hard part. The hard part is what emerges once you finally are alone with yourself. Many run from solitude because they don't want to face themselves. They seek out any distraction, social media, empty conversations, endless streaming series, unnecessary obligations, anything but sitting with their inner world. Because in that unexplored territory, there might be wounds still bleeding, uncomfortable truths, emotions that hurt more than someone else's abandonment. But the Stoics knew, you cannot live in peace if you don't know your own mind. No one is free who is not master of himself, said Epictetus, and you cannot master yourself if you don't even know what you think, feel, or fear when no one's watching. Knowing yourself means looking directly at your shadow. It means staying with your emotions without trying to repress or escape them. It means understanding why certain things hurt you, why you seek what you seek, why you repeat patterns that harm you, and for that, you need solitude, not as punishment, but as a path. Marcus Aurelius spent long hours writing to understand himself. His meditations weren't meant to be published. They were dialogues with himself, acts of deep introspection, because he understood that the most powerful emperor is not the one who rules an external empire, but the one who governs his inner world. We, in this era saturated with stimuli, have lost that habit. Today, introspection is avoided. We are taught to project ourselves, to display, to share, but not to inquire. We live outwardly. We think so others can read us. We speak to fill the silence. We post to feel like we exist. And in doing so, we drift further and further from ourselves. But everything you don't face dominates you. Everything you don't look at limits you. Everything you don't understand about yourself becomes a prison. That's why Stoicism proposes a pause, to listen, to observe, to register every thought without fear, because only then can you begin to transform it. When you learn to be alone with your mind, you discover it's not as terrifying as you imagined. Yes, there are uncomfortable moments. Yes, some thoughts hit hard. But there are also answers. There is intuition. There is strength. There is clarity. And that clarity doesn't come through likes or notifications. It comes when you sit in silence and choose not to run away. Seneca said, "The mind that is focused on itself needs no witnesses." That is, when you can be with yourself sincerely, without masks, without needing approval, you are truly growing. Because no one can take that bond from you. No one can interfere in that intimate space you've built with your soul. That's why solitude shouldn't be avoided. It should be cultivated like a garden, with patience, with respect, with attention. At first it may seem barren, but over time truths buried deep begin to bloom. You begin to understand your reactions, to heal your wounds, to make decisions from awareness, not confusion. And that process, no one can do it for you. No relationship can replace it. No book can hand it to you. It's yours, and it only happens in silence. The human mind is like an ocean. On the surface, it may be stirred by storms, winds, currents. But if you dive deep enough, you reach a serene depth, calm, solid. That is where introspection leads you. Those who never dive live at the mercy of the waves. Those who dare to descend find peace. So stop fearing your mind. Stop running from yourself. Every time you shut off the outside world to listen inward, you're building the strongest foundation there is, self-knowledge. Because no one can take away what you discover within yourself. So let solitude be your teacher, not to suffer, but to see, not to lock yourself away, but to open yourself, not to flee the world, but to find your center. True freedom begins when you stop being afraid of what you think. And when that happens, you are no longer alone with your mind. You are accompanied by your own consciousness. If this session is helping you see solitude with new eyes, follow us and join this space where we cultivate inner strength, calm, and self-love. Here you will learn to live with yourself with dignity, without fear of silence or emptiness. Being alone can also mean being whole. Stoic lesson 9. Emotional dependency creates emptiness. Many believe that the emptiness they feel inside comes from the absence of someone, that the pain exists because that person is no longer here, because they left, because they abandoned us. But the truth is, what really hurts is not their absence, it's the dependency. It's having handed over so much of your well-being to someone else that when they go, they take everything with them, your peace, your self-worth, your sense of value. That is the real poison. Emotional dependency is a form of invisible slavery. It makes you believe you need someone else to be happy, to feel calm, to feel whole, and when you depend, you suffer. Because everything that's out of your control becomes a threat, a glance, a silence, a delay, someone else's decision. Your well-being is no longer in your hands, but in theirs. And that, for a Stoic, is unacceptable. Epictetus said it plainly, if you want to be free, don't desire what depends on others. Because the moment your happiness, your self-esteem, or your stability depends on someone else, you've lost control of your life. The emptiness you feel wasn't caused by their absence. It was caused by the self-abandonment that occurred while you were with them. You began to set aside your passions, your projects, your time, your boundaries. You conformed so much to the other that you blurred your own outline. And now, left alone, you no longer know who you are without that relationship. That's not love. That's forgetting yourself. Seneca warned, most of our troubles come from surrendering ourselves unreservedly to what does not depend on us, and the affection of others does not depend on you. You can be the most attentive, the most loyal, the most present, and still not be enough for someone who doesn't know how to value you, or who simply chose another path. But that does not define you. What does define you is how you respond. When that inner void appears, you have two options. Keep trying to fill it with more dependency, another relationship, more external validation, more noise, or start filling it with the only thing that can truly sustain you, yourself, self-acceptance, purpose, virtue, discipline, peace. Stoicism doesn't tell you to isolate yourself or to stop loving. It tells you to love without losing yourself, to share without dissolving, to be with others, but never place your soul in someone else's hands. Because your soul is sacred. Your soul is yours. Some go from one relationship to the next just to avoid feeling that emptiness. But that movement only deepens it. Because no other human being can give you what you do not give yourself. And the more you search outside for what's missing inside, the wider the chasm becomes. So what can you do? Look that emptiness in the eye. Stop covering it up. Stop blaming the other. Stop waiting for someone to come and save you. Start asking yourself, what part of me did I abandon while chasing love? What did I stop listening to inside myself out of fear of being alone? What dreams did I postpone? What parts of me do I sacrifice every time I fear losing someone? Those questions hurt, but they also liberate. The pain is not the problem. The problem is living in flight from it, because as long as you avoid it, it will keep running your life. But when you face it, when you understand it, when you move through it, it transforms. And the emptiness transforms too. It's no longer a bottomless pit, but a fertile space where you can rebuild yourself from your truth. No one can heal that void for you. No one can give you your worth. No one can love you the way you need to love yourself first. And that's not selfishness. It's responsibility. It's the foundation of all healthy love. Because when you are whole, you can share from abundance, not lack. You can love without clinging. Be present without depending. Stay without possessing. Let go without breaking. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Your soul becomes dyed with the color of your thoughts." If you constantly think about what you lost, what you lack, what left you, your soul will be filled with scarcity. But if you focus on who you are, on what you can build, on the peace you can cultivate, your soul will bloom. So do it. Start today. Reclaim that sacred space within you. Reconnect with what gives your life meaning. Honor your emotions, but don't drown in them. Learn to support yourself, to comfort yourself, to drive yourself forward. Learn to care for yourself with the same tenderness you once gave to others. And when someone comes along, if they do, they won't come to complete you, but to walk beside you. Not out of need, but by choice. Because you will have understood that true companionship begins the moment you are no longer afraid to be with yourself. And that moment, that awakening, is the beginning of a freer life. Stoic Lesson 10. Live with yourself as you would with someone you love. Most people say they want to find love, someone who understands them, who stays, who makes them feel valued, safe, and whole. They seek that kind of presence that doesn't judge, doesn't leave, that remains through good days and grey ones. But very few ask themselves, am I already that person for myself? Would you live with yourself if you were someone else? Would you treat yourself with tenderness if you were someone you deeply loved? Would you speak to yourself with the same compassion you offer someone in pain? Would you care for your body, your mind, your time, with the same attention you would give to someone you love with all your soul? The Stoics knew that the most important relationship is not the one you have with others, it's the one you have with yourself, because everything else is born from it. And if that relationship is broken, all others will be affected. If you neglect yourself, you expect someone else to take care of you. If you judge yourself, you assume everyone else is judging you too. If you don't speak to yourself with respect, you won't be surprised when others disrespect you. Marcus Aurelius put it clearly in his Meditations, the soul becomes stronger when it relies on itself. Not when it isolates itself from the world, but when it builds a healthy relationship with itself. When it no longer needs to flee its own company because it has learned to be a refuge, not a prison. But that relationship, like any other, is built day by day, gesture by gesture, thought by thought. How do you speak to yourself when you make a mistake? How do you treat yourself when you're tired? How do you listen to yourself when you feel sadness, fear, or confusion? Do you shut down? Do you punish yourself? Do you ignore yourself? Or do you give yourself space to feel, to understand, to care for yourself as you would someone you love? Many believe loneliness is painful because there's no one else around. But the deeper truth is that loneliness hurts when you're not there for you. When instead of being your own companion, you abandon yourself. When you fill the silence with noise, the hours with screens, the emptiness with addictions, the thoughts with distraction, all to avoid seeing yourself. The Stoic does not flee from himself. He sits with himself. He observes. He gets to know. He guides himself, because he knows that nothing solid can be built outwardly if there's a war going on inside. Loving yourself is not about looking in the mirror and repeating empty affirmations. It's about committing to yourself, giving yourself what you've so desperately searched for in others: attention, respect, patience, consistency. It's caring for your nutrition, not for appearance, but because your body is your home. It's giving yourself rest because you deserve to function from energy, not exhaustion. It's setting boundaries because your peace is sacred. It's letting go of comparison because your value is not based on external standards. It's letting go of perfectionism because you are worthy, even with your scars. It's forgiving yourself because punishment doesn't heal, understanding does. And above all, it's staying. Whether you're doing well or not, whether you're rising or falling, whether you're surrounded or alone, staying with yourself. That is the most powerful form of love. And it's the only one you can guarantee yourself each day. Because everything else is unstable. Everything else can change. Today someone walks with you, tomorrow they may not. Today you succeed, tomorrow perhaps not. Today you're admired, tomorrow you're criticized. But if you stand firm with yourself, no external storm can sink you. Epictetus summed it up this way: don't seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens. Then you will be happy. And I tell you, don't seek for others to love you the way you need if you're not willing to do it for yourself first. Self-love is not ego. It is foundation. It is root. It is home. Make yourself your home. Make your mind a livable space. Make your emotions a compass, not a sentence. Make your solitude a place you can return to without fear, every time the world becomes noise. And when you achieve that, you'll not only be alone without feeling empty, you'll be alone and full of presence, full of serenity, full of purpose. And then, if someone comes into your life, it won't be to complete you. It will be to share in what you've already cultivated. That is true wholeness. That is the wisdom of living with yourself as you would with someone you love, because you deserve that love, because you can give yourself that love, because you are that love. And if you dare to live that way, you will never feel alone again, because you will have found the best company, yourself. Maybe you didn't come here looking for an answer, but searching for a silence, a different kind of silence. Not the awkward silence of someone who feels abandoned, but that serene silence full of meaning that only appears when you finally sit alone with yourself, without masks, without excuses, without distractions. Many people run from solitude because they're afraid to meet themselves, because they suspect, and rightly so, that behind the noise there are unanswered questions, pain left unhealed, emptiness that hasn't been named. But running away doesn't erase any of it. It only postpones the inevitable. And sooner or later, life will leave you alone. Not to punish you, but to awaken you. Being alone is a privilege that few know how to honor. It's a state of courage. Because the one who can remain with themselves without anesthetic, without escaping through a screen, without seeking comfort in hollow affection, is ready for anything. The Stoics never saw solitude as weakness. They saw it as training, as a fundamental practice for knowing oneself, strengthening oneself, elevating oneself. Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, all of them spent long periods alone, and from that place they thought, they wrote, they transformed their inner world. Today you've done the same. You stayed, you read, you listened, you felt. And in each word, in each lesson, you reconnected with that truth the digital noise tries to silence. You are already enough. You don't need company to have value. You don't need approval to have peace. You don't need likes, constant presence, or a schedule full of superficial relationships. What you need, and what you've now found, is intimacy with yourself. You've begun a brave path. The path of those who no longer fear closing the door to the world for a while in order to open the door to their soul. The path of those who understand that solitude is not the problem, disconnection from oneself is, because there is no greater loneliness than being surrounded by people and feeling empty, and no greater fullness than being alone and feeling peace. If something in this session stirred something inside you, if a phrase made you pause, if you felt that finally someone put into words what you couldn't name, then you're not alone. Many of us are here with you, people tired of the noise, of appearances, of living facing outward while forgetting their inner world. People who no longer seek to fill their time with fleeting relationships, but with meaningful ones, starting with the most important of all, the relationship with themselves. This community exists to accompany you on that journey, not to entertain you, not to distract you, but to help you look inward with honesty, with courage, with compassion. And if this session became a refuge, if you felt relief, clarity, or strength, I invite you to subscribe. Subscribing here isn't just a click, it's a symbolic act. It's saying, I'm ready to choose myself first. It's a commitment to continue walking this path, to never again get lost in the outside world, to move toward yourself, even when it hurts. Because yes, there will be hard days, days when solitude feels like a burden, days when you'll doubt everything, even yourself. But there will also be days of clarity, days when you'll be thankful you didn't betray yourself, days when you'll look in the mirror and for the first time won't want to run away. And on that day, you'll know it was worth it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing yourself this encounter. Thank you for making Stoicism not a trend, but a conscious, brave, and deeply human way of life. I'm excited to hear your stories of growth around this topic. Share your victories, your struggles, your experiences in the comments. And if you don't know what to say, just write, I'm ready to choose myself first, to show that you've completed this session. And don't forget to follow us if this content resonates with your values and your desire to live with Stoic wisdom. Your voice matters here. Every reflection strengthens and uplifts our community, expressing the true worth of each individual and contributing to our shared Stoic identity. The most supported comment will be pinned as the banner of this Stoic-minded community. A community that doesn't run from pain, but walks through it with courage, with wisdom, with honor. To join this Stoic community is to break the chains that limit you and build an inner fortress that no one can tear down. Follow us so you never again miss a Stoic reflection from us. Remember, every decision shapes your character. In the pinned comment you'll find 2 paths, and each one exists for a reason. Some decisions seem small, but they change everything. If something inside you shifted after hearing this, don't let it slip away. Subscribing isn't just a click, it's a decision, the decision to no longer live asleep, the decision to walk with awareness, with courage, with purpose. And if you choose to support this space as a member, you're not giving, you're sowing. Thanks to you, this flame stays lit. Your presence allows us to keep sharing wisdom in a noisy world, building together a community of awakened, grounded, and free souls. Choose with intention. Everything is here, because your growth cannot be postponed. We'll see you in our next gathering at Stoicism for Winners, where we'll continue exploring the treasures of Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. Now, take this opportunity to expand your understanding of Stoicism with new recommended sessions. Until we meet again, remember, you are the only master of your perception, the creator of your peace, and the warrior of your own battle. This is the legacy of Stoicism, the art of being invincible.